Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is March 6th, and today we're going to take a look at this system heading our way into the Pacific Northwest midweek coming up here Tuesday on into Wednesday, and what kind of snow totals we can expect out of the higher elevations and what we can expect at the surface areas, the lowland areas for Pacific Northwest here. Take a brief look around the rest of the country. Some severe weather possible out there across the plains and on into the southeast the next couple of days. And you can see our big ridge building here. It's giving us our nice days. We're dealing with some fog at the moment here through the Puget Sound. There were some dense fog advisories this morning, but that should clear out this afternoon to give way to a very nice sunny day again across areas of the Pacific Northwest. Really all areas. There's some high clouds there residing over the Rockies on into Idaho as some clouds start to move over the top of this ridge. This energy well up here is what's going to be diving down across eventually the USA on into next week and next weekend as an Arctic air mass moves down in there across the lower 48. And we're going to get a clip of that Arctic air, and then it's going to seep out. We're going to get some pretty chilly nights on into Wednesday and Thursday morning. But you can see how this ridge is developing and really driving the subtropical moisture well up into Alaska, and it's going to continue to do so as this ridge builds northward. And you can see all the cold air and some Pacific Ocean systems out here by the extreme western portion of the Aleutian Islands, as this ridge just really is driving this weather far to the north, and then that's what's going to allow for our Arctic air to come down back down from the north on the east side of that ridge. So just jumping into things here. Here's the visible satellite imagery, and you can see a nice sunny day will be in store as soon as we can burn off these lower clouds. You can see how some of the terrain down here through southwest Washington and the Oregon coastal range peaks above those low clouds, so you're already getting the sunny day there. And then you see how this is kind of moving down from north to south. So this is going to take a couple hours to push through at least, and you can see a little bit of that air being moved across a stable layer. That's why we're getting those little tiny wave clouds. I don't know if you can see that there on the satellite imagery, but it is there. So anyway, yeah, get out there and enjoy that, especially in the higher terrain here, the Cascades. You can see all these snow-capped peaks, Mount Rainier, for example, and get any kind of elevation this morning, you are basking in the sunshine. Look at eastern Washington. It's nice and sunny as well. And this extends down towards Oregon, but the low clouds are really pushing up against the Cascades to Oregon. Mount Hood is clear right now, though, for example. So checking out the rest of the country here, there's a storm system that's going to eventually bring the severe threat today. It's kind of bringing these winter weather advisories through portions of Wyoming, Utah, and Colorado. Fire danger down there as the system ejects, bringing the low relative humidity and some higher winds that move out of the west there. And checking out that severe threat, you can see there is an enhanced risk of severe weather here. This is mainly tornado driven. There's a chance of significant tornadoes out in this area. So if you do have concerns or interests out there, any family members, heads up there for Arkansas and Missouri. And this is for tomorrow as a severe threat pushes off to the east. So here we're looking at the NAM3 cam. This is a significant tornado parameter. You can see the instability building during the day. It's going to kind of remain capped a bit on into the afternoon, but once we get towards the evening here, some of these storms are going to break out here. And this is probably the main area of concern there, areas in northwest Arkansas for some significant tornadoes, and then it kind of moves off to the north and east there through southern Missouri. And then you'll notice that cold front kind of make its way through Arkansas on an early Monday morning and push this severe threat east for the day Monday. So checking out back to the Pacific Northwest here, you can see we've got some fog around the area. It's not too incredibly overwhelming right now. It doesn't look like anyway. It's kind of clearing up here at my house as well. But notice as we go into Sunday, there's some lower clouds on the coast. Here's Sunday evening, then into Monday morning now we are here. And it looks like the dense fog is going to set up a bit more tomorrow morning. Willamette Valley, Puget Sound, Washington Coast. You can see we're really in some pretty low visibility values there. And it finally does burn off during the day Monday, but you can see up towards Whidbey Island, San Juan's, it looks like it doesn't burn off much. Washington Coast might not burn off. Oregon Coast, same thing. And then the next system starts approaching. So we won't have to deal with fog on Tuesday as the air starts to get mixed up a bit, but then that next system does start moving through there. And we'll take a look at that here in a minute. And this is the NAM. This is the lower resolution model, but you can see the troughing start to open up a bit here onto Monday morning and afternoon, and that Arctic high starts to take up residence there over British Columbia. And you can see that troughing. It's quite weak, but it is there, so there's going to be some precipitation out of this as this Arctic high makes its way south, and there's kind of the resultant troughing in front of it. Not a completely dynamic system. It did trend downwards a little bit over the last few days. And here's what we can expect precipitation wise. You notice we're dry until about Tuesday morning. Then the precipitation starts coming down, kind of a Puget Sound convergence zone signature there for late Tuesday morning, afternoon. Is there some still get some pretty good snow bands through central Washington there, and then you'll notice the snow kind of moves down to Oregon on into Wednesday morning and northeast Oregon as we finally start to clear out from the north. Now looking here, this is what's going on at 18,000 feet. You see that trough kind of dig out here, and it does get out over us a bit, but it would have been a more dynamic system the further west. This trough would have been able to get out over the Pacific Ocean, and it would have tapped a little bit more moisture and brought a little bit better snowfall to the mountains, and maybe a little bit stronger convergence zone activity and maybe some convective activity around western portions of the state or higher terrain of the east portions. But anyways, we move on. Let's go to the European here and see what it shows as far as precipitation values coming in on this Tuesday system. You see it's in good agreement. This precip starting Tuesday morning, some convergence zone signatures, and some pretty decent snowfall going on through Tuesday morning here. So the European kind of still likes the storm for a pretty good snowmaker there through the Cascades, and the convergence zone would pass through the Puget Sound through Tuesday evening, and some pretty good snowfalls going on through the Oregon Cascades as we get into Wednesday morning, and eastern Oregon gets their fair share too. And maybe this will help bust that drought there for the east slopes of the Cascades of Oregon. You can see this Arctic boundary out here across Idaho and Montana as it sags south and east through the area there. Now we'll look at some extended stuff here too in a minute. First of all, let's take a look at the snow totals that are going to come with this system. So there's that system moving out through the Intermountain West here today. And then you can see the next system as it comes through Monday night and Tuesday. Starts to pile up the snow there for the BC higher terrain and for the Rockies of Montana, portions of Idaho. And then the Cascades start getting their fair share fall. Not a gigantic snowmaker, but some nonetheless. And it makes its way all the way down through the Oregon Cascades. This goes out to Wednesday afternoon. Some pretty good snowfall totals showing up here through northeast Oregon. That'll help out a lot. And again, the rain shadowed areas of the lower terrain there for eastern Washington kind of get skunked in this scenario. Now checking out the GFS, let's look at what it's showing here. You can see this lobe open up and try to get back over the Pacific Northwest. The GFS has been the one that's been furthest east with this event the entire time. It actually, the European kind of went towards its solution more and more, but there's still some disagreement on just how far west that trough is going to extend. And then check this out. I've been eyeing this for a couple days now. You can see this next system coming through here. The GFS has kind of been pretty bullish on showing a strong storm system moving through next weekend. This would be on Saturday afternoon, Saturday night to Sunday morning. The pretty powerful low moves through the area there and followed up by some more systems on its heels too, with some pretty good gradient setting up across the Pacific Ocean here, aiming the storm track at the Pacific Northwest and the extended. Take a look here at the European from last night and see if it's showing something similar. But here would be the GFS scenario as far as surface pressure. Here we go. This is on into tomorrow morning. Here goes the Arctic high start to come down and bring us our system on Tuesday night here. Just this very weak troughing here. Light precipitation amounts for the lowlands according to the GFS. There would be some mountain snow with this, of course, as this Arctic high finally makes its way down into the central portions of the USA here. And you can see it kind of overtake all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico and push down, well down into Mexico here. And then back to the Pacific Northwest here, you can see this low pressure system setting up here. Pretty powerful low diving right into Vancouver Island there. It would bring some pretty good gradients across the Oregon-Washington coast and even inland for Seattle and Portland in a scenario like this. Pretty tight gradient. As this system dives through here, you're looking at Seattle, Portland, probably a 9 millibar gradient, which can bring some mid-upper 40-mile-per-hour winds if that tracks correctly. And then you see the next system kind of roll through here too, and then you'll see the gradient set up here for some nice zonal flow, and the storm track would be aimed at us there. So we'll see how that turns out. Let's look and see if the European agrees at all. Here's looking at precipitable water, and I just wanted to run this. You can see this would be that windstorm system that would move through next weekend if the GFS was correct, but it's still out in fantasy land. And then you can see how these atmospheric rivers under normal conditions are more transient. They kind of hit us briefly, and then they move through. And you can remember the last one, how it just kind of came up and set up shop over us for over 48 hours, up to 72 hours in some scenarios. So just kind of giving you a comparison of what atmospheric rivers look like on a normal basis with these Pacific systems that are more progressive, and they kind of move through the area and they get out of here. Now here is the Canadian model. This is this morning's run. Let's see how far out this goes here, because the Canadian runs later than the GFS. But you can see it has this lobe a little bit further west, more in line with the European model here. So the GFS might be off by a little bit there. We might get a little bit more dynamic of a system, a little bit more powerful of a convergence zone through the Seattle metro area. Again, since we have model disagreement, we'll see how that works out. We'll take a look at the NAM3CAM, some of the high resolution models tomorrow, and line up what's going to happen here. But you can see that huge ridge kind of retrograding and allowing this troughing to take place back over us. And let's hit F5 and update this and see if there's new information in here. And you can see the lobe passing by and really hammering the central portions of the USA, and this will extend out to the East Coast. But you see this ridge here is building, but it's going to be transient. This is going to pass through, and this next system is kind of in line with the GFS is showing, but you can see the Canadian's only out to 132 hours here. So we're going to take a look at last night's model run of the European and kind of see if it shows any kind of hint at that windstorm coming up. But here's the Canadian showing this powerful Arctic high over British Columbia here, and the resultant troughing that is there. So that would bring some pretty good Cascade and Oregon Cascade snowfalls, some pretty good snowfall through British Columbia as well, and out towards the Rockies. You can see this trough setting up, and then the Arctic high kind of barrels down into the region. You can see it extend all the way out to the Pacific or the Gulf of Mexico there. Pretty powerful storm. Okay, so let's take a look at last night's European model run. Let's look at last night's. So we're going to look here. You can see this trough dig out as the ridge retrogrades and allows this lobe to get back over. So you can see how it approaches from the east, and it's kind of a dry trajectory. So it's not going to be as a dynamic system as it would have been had it, dug out a trough a little bit more over water, come down the British Columbia coast. But anyway, there's a transient ridge, and it kind of shows that system moving through here. Disagreement in the track of it, but that's to be expected for next weekend. So we'll see how this goes. But models are hinting, as you can see, with a fairly powerful system moving through next weekend. And then you can see another one kind of lining up there on into mid next week. And kind of similar signs of a more zonal flow here between the European and the GFS. So there is some agreement there. Let's see what this would equal on a surface map. This is last night's European run. And here we go. Here's a powerful Arctic high that bears down on us, and the troughing that sets up over us, bringing us our mountain snows. And this kind of barrels down across the USA. You can see it extending all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. And there's the next system that develops here. Kind of moves over the Pacific Northwest. A fairly weak low, but it does take a pretty favorable track in this scenario. It brings some breezy conditions for the area. And then a stronger system out here as you see this low pressure move through the area. So yeah, we're just trying to pin down these, look at these windstorms and see what the models trend for these systems coming up for next weekend. Here I wanted to show you this is a 2-meter temperature, so basically surface temperature. I wanted to show you the extent of this Arctic blast coming down for next week. So you can see this Arctic air just makes its way all the way down through Texas, all the way out to the Gulf Coast. You get freezing temperatures almost. And you can see this cold air just blast across the Gulf of Mexico here, all the way down to the Yucatan Peninsula. Look at all of North America is basically under some influence of this Arctic air at this point. This is next Saturday night. And models have been in really good agreement of this. So this cold air is on its way. So if you have interest off to the east, if you're traveling on the East Coast, the Midwest, the Great Lakes, Texas, wherever, you name it, the Southeast is going to be really cold. And the Intermountain West as well. And then you can see this air just kind of still going on into Sunday night, and before some of these warm temperatures start to come back a little bit for Texas. It never holds on for long down there. Now, this is the most recent European run on what's going to happen with this system coming up, the 06Z run. You can see the system coming through Tuesday. Monday night starts bringing that snowfall into BC. Here comes Tuesday morning, some convergent zone signature going on here Tuesday morning. Really pretty good snowfall showing up on the European here. coming up here into Tuesday afternoon. So that's a good thing. And you can see some precip gets all the way into the Columbia Basin here, and some really good snowfalls for the higher terrain of northeast Oregon, Idaho. As you can see, this Arctic boundary sagging south across the Rockies and the east side of the Rockies. And then the Oregon Cascades get a really good shot of snowfall here too on in through Wednesday morning, as it takes a while for this system to finally make its way out of our area. Now looking at Seattle-Tacoma, this was last night's European run. This is 6-hour max wind gusts. This is going to be the offshore winds that come through on Tuesday night until Wednesday morning. You can see some breezy north winds as those winds come blasting down the sound with a very modified Arctic front coming through. It's going to bring some chilly overnight temperatures, but nothing that we haven't seen already this winter. And then we look out here into the extended. You can see, check out, there's some pretty big windstorms lurking out here. So just depends on the track some of these lows take. There's a lot of 40s in here if you notice, but then of course there are a lot of scenarios where a windstorm just would not occur due to the track of the low, or maybe something else happening with the Gulf of Alaska low not setting up just how it's modeled right now. But you can see there is this chances for some bigger windstorms out there. It's just something to watch for now. It is still fantasy land. And here's that precip. You can see that the amounts are generally trending downwards for Seattle-Tacoma. You can see this. Really not much measurable precipitation. Generally less than 1/10 of an inch, actually. And then you can see the Pacific storm train start to head back our way. And you can see some higher totals in here. Some of the control run you can see has almost 1.5 inches in a 24-hour period. But the general mean is, probably for just about 0.6 of an inch in a 24-hour period during this area. But you can see there's a lot of dry areas in here, and there's some heavier precipitation amounts as we go. This is Portland International Airport. This is the last night's European run. You can see how this cold air filters in here, and Wednesday and Thursday morning you're going to have some pretty chilly overnight lows even into Friday morning below freezing. And then you can see we warm up as the Pacific systems look to get back on track and extending into the Pacific Northwest, and much more mild overnight lows we get to the extended in mid-March there for Portland, Oregon. Here's Portland's precipitation. Looks like they might get a little bit better amounts than SeaTac, but just slightly so. And then you can see the Pacific storm train taking aim at the Pacific Northwest with these values kind of all over the place, but generally agreeing there's going to be some systems moving through the area. So I want to show you guys this feature that occurs here when strong Arctic air masses move down across the lower 48 into the Gulf of Mexico. Here's Mexico here, and here's the Yucatan Peninsula. There's higher terrain in these areas all the way through Mexico up into the Yucatan. There's higher terrain out here. And there is a gap, a lower elevation gap right here. And now watch these winds. This is that north wind, this Arctic air mass, as it starts to march down across Texas. You can see it emerge over the Gulf of Mexico here. And some really strong winds get going here as this high pressure just flows into the Gulf of Mexico and banks up against the terrain here. And look what happens when it gets to the gap. It's got nowhere else to go, so it just blasts through this gap. This is the Tuanapecir winds here. These winds get really strong, and it really cools down the area as this high pressure builds in. This Arctic air crosses the Gulf of Mexico and really cools these areas down. But look at these winds, how they extend out. Some of these winds get over 70 miles per hour and are going to get over 70 miles per hour in this event. And you can see these winds extend all the way, kind of a bow wave in front of these gap winds as it goes across the eastern Pacific there. And it takes a while for this to calm down here too. This high pressure has to relax, and it goes on for a couple days. Now I'm going to back this up a little bit more here, and let's look at the surface temperature here. And you can see this really cold air in this Arctic air mass marked by the really drier air as well. If we look at dew point temperature, you can see that dry air moving down there. And you can kind of see it, the gap wind, push that dry air through into that subtropical air mass. And it really cuts off this moisture as that Arctic air moves through there. But anyway, let's go back to the surface temperature briefly here. And you can see that this really chilly air moved through the gap. It must be a nice relief, or it might even be pretty cold to a lot of these people living down there. They're used to warmer temperatures. But you can see a lot of these temperatures are up into the mid 90s even, as you can see here. But here comes this Arctic air mass, and look how much it cools it down. I mean, they're down into the 50s in some of these cases. That's a shock to the system there. So yeah, an interesting feature. I really love this gap winds as this Arctic air masses move down and kind of bank up on the terrain here in Mexico and the Yucatan Peninsula. Have nowhere else to go but blast through there. So anyway, So enjoy today. It should break out nice and sunny here for the Pacific Northwest, and you're gonna have some pretty good fog tomorrow morning, Monday morning. Tuesday shouldn't be too bad as far as fog because the winds will start to mix up the atmosphere a bit in the wake of the next system, or actually the leading edge of the next system as it moves into the area here for Tuesday on into Wednesday. Some good mountain snows coming up Tuesday afternoon and on into Wednesday for Washington, Oregon, and really eastern Oregon is going to get hammered too. And the Rocky Mountains will get a good shot of snowfall here too. So enjoy this nice day today and tomorrow, and then we'll be right back into some weather. Then we'll get another break, and then it looks like the Pacific Ocean storm train starts to bring some windstorm potential for the region here. So we'll take a closer look at this system tomorrow, and we'll take a see if we can get some model agreement on some of these windstorm tracks from the European GFS and the Canadian onto the future. So click like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.